Hello everyone, welcome. I'm Andrew. Whilst I'm taking a break from my Agile Design series, I wanted to put together a couple of other videos about DesiGen. In this video, I'm going to be demonstrating how to install it, just in case you have any problems. So this video is just going to be a short demonstration of installing DesiGen. There's one thing that might catch you out possibly that we need to cover. So here we are on the Get Designing website, which is the companion website to the Agile Software Design video series that I created. I tend to take people here just because it's easier to remember. getdesigning.notstandard.com. As we can see, the design tool features on the home page. So we just click the link to go to the documentation website for the tool. Now there are a couple of prerequisites here that we need to take account of. You need to make sure that you've already handled these prerequisites before you start. At the moment, DesiGen is a .NET Core 3.1 application, even though it's capable of generating code for .NET 6. It will soon get upgraded to .NET 6, but at the moment you still need .NET Core 3.1. There's also some stuff about Microsoft Edge and the fact that the application is built to use the WebView 2 runtime. Now I think that is installed by default on Windows machines now. I think it got rolled out as an update, but I'm not sure, so you just need to check. The final thing we need is a pre-created empty SQL Server database to which you have some sufficient permissions to create new objects. But we're going to connect to it using two accounts. We'll go through that as we go. Okay, assuming that you've dealt with those prerequisites, what we can do is we can click the download link and it will download to us. It's not particularly big, so it won't take very long. Once it's downloaded, obviously take a precaution of virus checking it. Make sure that it's not a problem, and then run up the installer. When we start the installer, what you're going to get is this warning, this scary warning saying that this doesn't look very good. Well, this is simply saying that the application is not signed, which is true. I don't have a code signing certificate, and that's a bit of a problem for a not-for-profit org. So I'm afraid you'll just have to click through this. If you click more info, it'll tell you what it is, that it's me and that it doesn't know the publisher, and just click run anyway. This will walk you through the installation. Have a read of the license agreement, but it basically says it's free, but that it's not yet open source. Now you need to choose an installation location. Now the default is outside of program files. That is very important, and that is a limitation of the framework with which the application is built. And it's built using a thing called Mobile Blazor Bindings, which was like an experimental framework that came before .NET MAUI. And it does what .NET MAUI now does, effectively, the hybrid Blazor version of .NET MAUI, because the user interface is built using Blazor. But there's a security issue in terms of, or a permissions issue, I should say, in terms of installing it in program files. If you install it in the program files folder, the WebView 2 runtime doesn't have permission to create temporary files within that folder, and so the application fails. And my guess is that that has been fixed now, but that it still causes a problem because we're using Mobile Blazor Bindings, which is an old framework. Again, that will be sorted soonish when it has the upgrade to .NET 6. So choose your location, but do not put it in program files or program files x86. It needs to be somewhere else. Choosing the default is often fine. And then just accept the prompts. And it installs very quickly because it's very small. And click finish. Then we need to fire it up, just by running the DesiGen application that appears in the start menu. You might have to scroll down to find that. Fortunately, it's visible to me. Okay, so this is the bit that's potentially going to catch you out. I've done a video which uploaded very recently about a security principle called least principle of least privilege. And what that is about is saying that you should understand the difference in everyday usage to occasional usage and assign permissions accordingly. And for everyday access to the DesiGen database in which all your designs will be stored, you do not need very high level of rights. So what this prompt is asking you to do is enter the everyday credentials for accessing the database on the day-to-day basis. What you need for that to be suitable is that it can connect to the database that you've created. You should already have created that at this point. And we will make it a member of the security role that gets created for you, and that's all it needs to do. So it doesn't need to have DBO or SA type privileges in any way, shape or form for everyday operation. This first screen is asking you something which you won't get asked again, which is enter your everyday low level, not privileged security information in order to access the database. So my database is called DesiGen_demo and it's on my local machine. So the server name, I can just use dot. I've created a user account with which to access this server. So what I suggest you do with this database is you put it on your production database servers. This is an important database if you're going to make use of this system. It needs backing up, it needs protecting, looking after. There's intellectual property of yours within the database, and so you should be cautious about where you put it. Now, assuming that you do not have full permissions to databases on your production server, which I hope you don't under your default account, what might be suitable is to use your everyday Active Directory account to access this on the assumption that your SQL Server is within a domain. If you're running this on the cloud, then obviously you'll need to adapt these discussions appropriately to whatever cloud you're running it on. But what I've done is I've created a SQL auth user. So the reason that I've done that, and I can't use integrated security, is because I don't have a production server. I'm actually putting this on the development server, which is on my local machine. And I do have full permissions to that. So what I'm trying to do is show you, encourage you to use the sort of principle of least privilege that I've allowed for within the application by using an account with limited permissions. And so I've had to create one that is the case, for which that is the case. So with that done, it connects to the database and it checks the condition of the database and can see that work is needed on the schema of the database itself. So what it's doing me now is warning me that things are going to happen that change the structure of the database. Remember, if you're working in a team, you shouldn't really all try to do this at the same time. Okay, so what's happening now is that it's asking me for a second set of credentials. You can see in this state, we need a very high level of permissions because we're going to change the schema of the database. This is the only time we need those permissions though. Remember, the principle of least privileges says that the permissions that we used on the screen, the first screen that came up, don't need to include schema change, whereas this one definitely does. So this time we need to enter a different set of credentials. And in this case, I'm going to use integrated security because this is my my development machine, and my regular account unfortunately needs access to schema permission changes for pushing them from Visual Studio. So this is probably the opposite way round to the way that you would have it if you had this running on your live database server, your production database server. And it's the way around I have to do it in this demo. And we wait a short moment while it performs all the upgrades that are necessary. multiple sets of upgrades in order to bring you up to date with your schema. And so it says upgrades have been completed, but there's one more thing we need to do, and this is the thing I need to show you. So if we have a look at my database server setup, we can now see that I've got a database here. DesiGen_demo was the one that I created for this demo. If we go into the roles that exist, the database roles, we can see there's one called UI rights. That's the role that was created as a result of the application being installed. It didn't exist until those schema changes had been made by the application itself. So this is the first point at which I can do this. There are currently no role members. So what I need to do is I need to add the user that I'm using as a role member. By doing that, and you can see that it's been accepted there, I'm now a member of a role that has the everyday permissions I need in order to get into the database. If I don't do that, what would happen is that I would be asked to do the upgrade again, because what happens is it connects to the database, it can't see the schema because it doesn't have sufficient rights, and it tries to apply it all again, and you don't want to get in that loop. So make sure that you add the everyday user account that you're using as a member of the UI rights role in the database that you have your designs are going to be stored in. With that done, what it can now do is it can now register all the built-in templates, create all the categories that things are in order to make them available to you when you do design. With all that done, it's going to run a little introductory tour that explains a few of the key concepts of DesiGen and how it works. We could skip it, but the point is it's going to tell us about things like design and design version, which are design at the top level, and then there can be multiple versions within a design. It's going to talk about system. So as I mentioned in another video, designs can be placed and grouped within systems. It's like a categorization. But system is also the level at which we apply a coding standard. So if you've got multiple systems with different coding standards that need configuring differently for your generation needs, then you have the ability to do that by creating separate systems in the setup screens. It explains a little bit about what an artifact is. It's well worth reading, and the artifact types. So there are really 4 artifact types. There's solution, project, folder, and then item. Item being a leaf node within that hierarchy. Talks a little about data structure and fields. A data structure is just a collection of bits of information, fields that we might want to work with together in one piece. Talks a little bit about templates and how you might be able to create your own templates, how you register an artifact template source, a code generation template source. It talks about artifact sets. Sets are how you create multiple things all at once, multiple artifacts. And they're starting to talk about template source and how you do that. A little bit about generation, and enough to say that you can control the generation behavior. By default, it will only generate artifacts once, but you can change that. And with that done, we're ready to use the application. So that's the installation. The reason I wanted to go through that was about that point regarding the principle of least privilege. I have to practice what I preach, and so what I've done is I've set up the application that it uses exactly that principle. Your everyday connection can be a relatively low permission connection, and then you elevate each time you install a new version and there are schema changes to be made. It only asks you if it identifies schema changes that need to be made. I guess the point is that UD developers at the other end of this video are my deployment pipeline for DesiGen, because it's a Windows application. It's installed as a desktop application, and that's why you get asked for the highly privileged credentials that are required during upgrades. And in some circumstances, it's possible to do that as part of a deployment pipeline, but obviously I can't have a deployment pipeline to your desktop machine. And so that's why you're asked to do that and deal with that. Besides doing upgrades, you need minimal permissions. You only need to be a member of that UI rights role and nothing else. Okay, with the installation done on your machines now, you can continue on with trying out the application for yourself. Maybe follow along with one of the tutorials that I do to get a feel for what steps are involved in doing a design and then generating the code from it. There will be other videos on DesiGen, so stay tuned for more. Thanks again for watching. I hope you'll join me again soon.